Hi, and welcome to part 2 of our 2,000 mile French road trip in an EV. In part 1, we headed from our home to Provins in the Île-de-France region. In this leg, we're heading from Provins to Semur-en-Auxois in the Côte d'Or department of the Bourgogne-Franche-Comté region, or what we would have known as Burgundy. I have plenty of tips and hints to help you on your French road trip. We've a lot more of France to see on our Tour de France, so if that interests you, why not subscribe and hit that notification bell? Anyway, without further ado, let's head out of the wonderful medieval town of Provins. We didn't manage to get a charge here, it was a little informal, but that's not an issue. We had a lovely time in Provins, and if you want to see more of that, I'll pop a video up at the end. There'll also be the playlist of this trip so you can dive into the full trip. So despite the Polestar 2 having the Google Maps navigation system, which is very good, I still managed a couple of circuits at Provins. But you don't need to see that. We've left via the Porte de Jouy. The planned journey is around 150 miles, with just one short section on the autoroute where we'll stop at an air, grab a quick charge and a snack before heading on our way. But at the moment we're enjoying the French countryside of the Île-de-France region. Now let me cover something I missed in the first instalment of this series, the Critère. It's France's emission badge, and many towns and cities require one if you want to drive into their low emission zones. It's inexpensive, easy to order before you travel, and could save you from an unexpected fine. There will be a link in the description to take you to the French government website. I have mine mounted on a clear piece of perspex so I can easily remove it when I'm not in France. There's now one for many EU countries, and I didn't want my windscreen looking like the uniform of a well-trained Boy Scout. I think for this trip it may well only be needed for skirting around Grenoble in the next video in this series. But as I said, it's inexpensive, around €5, and that's valid for the lifetime of the car. Back to this video. And I'm well aware in this edited down version of a full day, I'm showing you the best bits, not being stuck behind a truck for 20 kilometres. But here's the truth, when I reflect back on these trips, I just remember travelling through the French countryside, seeing the real France, not a polished version that social media feeds us up. And I love our travels for this. It means I have real experience. So if you have any questions, pop me a comment. I'm more than happy to help. Oh, and if you happen to enjoy this video, then why not give it a like? And for clarity, this road trip started in early September, and the weather conditions are changeable. This is a Wednesday, just to complete the picture, and we're travelling along D roads until we reach the autoroute section. One of the things we love about these roads is the variety. You never quite know what you're going to come across. For us, spending a few hours on the D roads is always more interesting than spending the same amount of time on the autoroutes. That said, sometimes the autoroutes are simply the most practical way to get from A to B, and they're all part of the journey. And so our section of the autoroute begins. It's just a matter of collecting a ticket at the Aire de Villeneuve for our brief foray onto the A5. And it's just a short way to our charging stop at the Aire de Villeneuve-Vauluisant. 2.5 miles to be exact. Once again facing delays to get charged. Sorry, my British sarcasm. Time to plug in and stretch our legs. So we're here for a little over 22 minutes, during which time we've pulled 20.16 kilowatt hours of electricity at a cost of £14.74. That's around a third of a tank. So in no time at all, we're back on the road again. But as I said, I won't show you tons of all the route. We have that on the next leg of this trip. And besides, this section is only 16 miles. The only reason I've included this section is to pick up the charge point. I know I'm being cautious, but it's better to be safe than sorry, right? Our journey takes us from the A5 to the A19 to the outskirts of Sens, before exiting at the Péage de Saint-Denis-le-Saint. That little trip on the autoroute has cost us €3. We're now going to head along D roads to our first stopover of Saint-Florentin. Don't worry, I'll show you that. So this is not just all road miles. But before we arrive, let me tell you how I planned this trip, and it starts with a spreadsheet. I like a spreadsheet. In fact, I'm renowned for it. In front of me, I have a coaster from our friend Becky that reads, "Relax, I have a spreadsheet for that." Thanks, Becky. Anyway, I start with a spreadsheet to build out our framework. I use it to record dates, where I depart, where I arrive, the miles in between them, how long I expect that journey to take. I also have accommodation, if it has a charger, and a few other bits. At the end of the trip is the expenses spreadsheet. That's not so much fun. But it did tell me that this trip cost me 12 pence per mile in charging. The planning spreadsheet is where I start, but it's just the first link in the chain. And after all the planning, it's normally the last piece to be completed. I generally have an idea for a start date for the trip, and for this, it's after the UK school summer holidays, so early September. Now I just need a list of destinations. Time to pull out the next tool in the toolbox, Google MyMaps. That's different from Google Maps. You need a Google account, but it's free. Inspiration comes in many forms: social media, TV shows, past visits, recommendations, blogs, and strangely for this trip, an advertisement. The one for the Polestar 2 that took in some stunning landscapes in the south of France. Now I tracked it down to a place called Sisteron and also a section of the D2. These were pinned on my map, places to visit in France, and I use that as a reference for this trip. I created a new map called French Road Trip 2024. Yes, it's taken a while to get to you. And in this map, I start pinning. I've added a link to the map in the description below. So I'll start with Semur-en-Auxois. We love it here. We want to spend some time in Antibes. We've passed through it many times, but this year we want to explore. We have Sisteron, then it's a blank canvas. Give yourself at least one down day, where you rest yourself and the car. For us that's Albi on day 10, but we might alter the plans and end up with more. These plans are meant to be flexible. Then you choose how you want to travel between stops. Today is a slow day, and we have a stopover planned, and that's Saint-Florentin. And our research has led us to a car park where we can charge while we explore. So Saint-Florentin is a medieval town, nestled where the Armance River meets the Armation River. This charming medieval town has welcomed travellers for centuries, thanks to its strategic position on the historic trade routes. Its history stretches back to the Middle Ages, when Saint-Florentin grew into a fortified settlement, prospering through commerce and agriculture. As you wander its quiet streets today, you'll still find handsome old buildings, traditional timber-framed houses, and the imposing Church of Saint-Florentin, standing as a reminder of the town's long, resilient past. It's the sort of place where history isn't shouted about, it simply becomes part of the scenery as you slow down and explore. We've arrived shortly before lunch, and sadly the Church of Saint-Florentin isn't open. We have got our timings wrong, and I'll explain more of that later. Saint-Florentin is the perfect place to visit if you want to see the real France, and less of the tourist France. So, because we haven't had lunch, we've only been here 46 minutes, but that's enough time to draw 25.4 kilowatt hours of charge for £7.62. That's 30%, and it's given us a range top-up of 90 miles, all while we were exploring. Anyway, it's time to get back on the road, and more of planning a French road trip, or the way we do it. We're now on route planning, how to get from A to B. And here's the third tool, ViaMichelin. It's an app and a web-based tool. I urge you to subscribe, it's free, and it will give you a ton of useful information beyond A to B. Hopefully you'll see why it's better than Google or Apple Maps, although what I learned from it does make its way into Google Maps eventually. So for each leg of your trip, you put in your stop and start points. It will give you up to 3 possible routes, each with a breakdown of the cost, including tolls, so you can choose slow or quick. For reference, this trip cost a total of £108.20 in tolls. Our 2025 trip, £60.54. and this year's trip £154.37. It also helps with stopovers if you're missing a pin on your MyMaps board. Say for example our 2027 French road trip. Yes, we're planning out our next one. We want to aim to get to Uzes in the south of France as quickly as enjoyably possible. That's a journey of around 600 miles from Calais, so it makes sense for me to split it and discover a new part of France. Chaumont has come up as a possible option with plenty of useful information, but you can really fill your boots with possibilities. You can even enter your car details and a reference consumption to give you a complete breakdown of the cost. There's an option to search for a combination which we look at, but we have our own method for that. It's also worth mentioning it covers a lot more than just France. Then, if you're on a slower leg, why not try AI? Start with a prompt such as create a scenic route between A and B, taking in historical towns and villages, or whatever your preferences are, and see what it comes back with. Of course, the usual caveat with AI, you will need to sanity check its response. I also use AI for helping with places to eat, but in that sanity check I often find places that have been closed for a while or have changed ownership and offer a different style of food. Talking of places to eat, let's talk lunch, Sundays and Mondays, and French culture. Now, as you can tell, we love France and have been coming here for years, and you learn the way things tick a bit. We sometimes like to pick up a freshly prepared baguette from a boulangerie. Make sure you do that before 12 to 12:30 because they often close for lunch. And talking of lunch, you want to be seated between 12 to 1. You certainly don't expect much after 1:30. And I'm talking about the smaller towns and villages, and there are exceptions. Places that have phrases sans arrêt or non-stop. But it's a cautionary tale from experience, like trying to find a restaurant on a Sunday or Monday. Sometimes this can be challenging, so check the opening times and a location before you book it. Even hotel restaurants may be closed, but they could offer a brasserie service. Anyway, back to the journey. We've just passed through the little commune of Buffon, once home to an ironworks, which I guess explains the canal to our right. The vast majority of this journey has been through the Burgundy region of France, although strictly speaking we're in the Bourgogne-Franche-Comté region. We have been since before the autoroutes section this morning, and our destination Semur-en-Auxois is also in Burgundy. The reason I mention this is because of regionality and what you'll find on the menus, if like us you wish to stick to traditional French food. So maybe a little homework before you leave will pay you dividends on the route. Don't skip something thinking you'll see it later if you're switching regions like us. Anyway, enough about food and drink, I'm getting hungry now. So I've taken you through towns and villages since we left the autoroute, and we've stuck to D roads all the way. One thing that surprises me is the traffic you'll see on the journey like this, from cyclists, microcars, Renault vans, to full-blown HGVs that seem way too big for the places they pass through. And then the D roads themselves. They can range from anything like younger sisters of the N roads that join the cities and predates the autoroute network, to tiny lanes where I think two bicycles would struggle to pass. My point is, this affects your journey times. Don't think from A to B is only 150 miles, so it should just take 2 to 3 hours. If that's what you want, stick to the autoroutes, but you will miss the real France. Even on this journey, we've had to make sacrifices. If we'd had the time, we would have stopped at Fontenay Abbey, but with just one night in Semur, we're saving ourselves for Flavigny-sur-Ozerain. It looks amazing, if a little familiar. As soon as we pull into the village car park, Janet said, "We've been here before." And we had, on our 2008 tour of France. That's also where we discovered Semur, and it was a lack of time there that meant we missed the riverside walk. We wanted to spend the extra time in Semur, so we decided to skip Flavigny this time. But here's some images from our last visit. If it seems familiar to you and you've seen the film Chocolat featuring Johnny Depp and Juliette Binoche, it's because it was the primary filming location. Anyway, we're on the final leg, and I don't have time to cover our next 3 tools. That's ABRB, a better route planner, Microsoft OneNote and Google Maps, and of course we return to the spreadsheet. I'll wrap that up in the next video. I'll also include some other sources of inspiration you can use to pull locations for your trip. But now we're arriving at Semur-en-Auxois and our accommodation has EV charging, so happy days. And then a really strange question. How many kilowatt hours do I want? A quick bit of mental arithmetic and I opt for 25. That should take me to just under 100%. Anyway, as is customary, let's have a brief look around Semur-en-Auxois. And of course, if you want to see more, you'll have to watch the complete video, which is going to pop up at the end, along with a playlist of the whole trip. I suppose then it's goodbye from me. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it and some of it's useful. Until next time, happy and safe travels.